So many cars, yet so few plugs. Welcome to the Urban EV podcast, where we speak to industry leaders and EV owners with boots on the ground to read the tea leaves on the direction of the e-mobility revolution. I'm your host, Rob Hoffman.
And I'm Scott Murphy.
Today, we're taking a different kind of ride, back in time, but with zero emissions. Our guest today is Justin Lunny, founder and CEO of Everati. He's a lifelong car enthusiast and seasoned entrepreneur who's spent more than 30 years at the intersection of business, technology, and sustainability. Justin's mission through Everati is to reimagine some of the most iconic vehicles in automotive history, not by preserving them as museum pieces, but by transforming them into high-performance electric masterpieces. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great introduction. Thank you.
Justin, can you just give us your origin story? I know you've been in fintech, entrepreneur, and then right into the founding of Everati.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So my background, as you say, has been in tech for most of my life. So I started my life in kind of corporate tech businesses such as Hewlett-Packard and the like. And then I founded a business 2006 that was pretty successful, sold that in 2016, 17, and did another couple of businesses in the interim. They weren't in automotive. They were in tech. They were in fintech. And I've always been a car guy through and through. And then a couple of things happened to me. So my daughter, who just turned 15, but when she was kind of 7 or 8, had started worrying about climate change and the earth flooding. And I was thinking, as a parent, that's pretty hard to come to terms with. But also, I then saw somebody that was once known as Prince Harry, but we'll call him Harry, and Meghan drove away from their wedding at Windsor Castle, which is 5 miles from where I live, actually, in an electric E-Type Jaguar. That was really my inspiration, which is to say, well, there's a really cool space here to develop some very, very high quality, beautiful cars to look at, but happen to be clean powertrain. So that was kind of the inspiration. And here we are today.
Is the EV Restomod business, is it all about sustainability, or is there more to it?
No. Look, I mean, sustainability is a great byproduct. The fact that these cars, you can now drive them in cities without, polluting and choking people. So that's got to be a good sign. But probably more importantly, really, is the driving experience is just incredible. And people sometimes raise an eyebrow at that. But I delivered one of our clients' cars yesterday in central London, a beautiful Mercedes Pagoda with an awesome powertrain, and just comparing that car even to a 280 SL, but with our powertrain, it's just night and day. It's just so much more easy to use. Obviously, it's more performant, although we don't make it too heavy on the performance. You don't want to make it dangerous, but it's just such a joy to drive, and that's really where we kind of win hearts and minds, I guess.
All right, so let's talk about the cars themselves and the engineering challenges. Now, I know you've done, I'm sure there's more to this list, Porsche 911s, Land Rover Defenders, GT40s. Talk to us about the engineering challenges and just give us a list of some of the more other cars that you've resto-modded over the past few years.
Yeah, so our business model very much is that we will define a powertrain, then we will get the cars to kind of suit that. So essentially, we have a small 4x4 platform, which is, as you said, the Land Rover Classic, the pre-Defender type model. That technically could also work in a number of other small 4x4s, let's say the Classic G, the Toyota FJ, and various others. But right now, we do the Land Rover series. We have our Porsche platform. Goes without saying, that G-Body and 964, that's been extremely popular. And then we have what we call our front engine rear drive. And that doesn't mean much, but if you imagine a front engine rear drive vehicle, which, let's be honest, covers pretty much every car from Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce, and a variety of others from probably the mid-60s on to maybe even the 90s. So that kind of covers that. But again, our focus there is on the Mercedes Pagoda. And then our GD40 is really our supercar type platform. And the reason we do it that way is that each of those powertrains takes about 5,000 or 6,000 hours of development. It has 2,500 documents that go with it from a kind of proof point perspective. So we don't just do any car, we focus on those, and then we have a few more in the pipeline as well. Right through to, we do what we call a very bespoke program. So we have a car in right now that some people will love, which is the Lamborghini LM002, which was like the Rambo Lambo of the 80s. And that's a very bespoke project. So that's going to be, again, thousands of hours of engineering. The reason we do it the way we do it is we redefine the whole car. We don't just swap it. We worry about brakes, suspension, center of gravity, power outputs, the whole thing.
So if a client has deep enough pockets, you'll do a one-off bespoke version But your preference here, I guess, is to scale up and to create these modular platforms that
That's
you can
right.
kind of apply to a whole series of cars.
Precisely.
Talk to us about just from an engineering perspective, the balancing the weight handling and the aesthetics. How do you do it? And once again, you mentioned here with the Mercedes that it almost sounds like you detuned it because you don't want it to be too powerful.
That's
But is
right.
your goal to actually create a car that performs better than the original?
Yeah, look, we're very fortunate. The way I describe it is, we are creating EVs out of cars people already love. We don't have to build a new brand. We don't have to build a brand new, the likes of Lucid, Tesla, and others, spending fortunes, to actually do what they do. We're very happy because people already love the Porsches, the Pagodas, and everything else. If you look at our Porsche as a good example, we build those actually, even though we're a British company, build those in Southern California. The engineering that's gone into there
Mm.
is both in terms of the powertrain, in terms of getting that weight and weight distribution correct. And then we do an awful lot with composites on that car. So, for example, virtually every panel on that vehicle is carbon fiber. What that means is the end result is a car that has exactly the same weight distribution as the original. It is actually lighter than the original by about 40 pounds. So if you imagine a 964 turbo, ours is about 40 pounds lighter than a 964 turbo, but looks virtually the same. It's upgraded interiors. It's got brand new air conditioning systems, if you wish, heated seats, audio systems, and it's about 70% more powerful than the original. So, an upgraded brakes, upgraded suspension, electronic dampers. So this isn't just a swap. This is kind of almost a brand new car program based on an existing vehicle.
Let me ask you one thing, and this is something here I think which a lot of enthusiasts are probably going down this road as well. I'm sure a lot of these restorations are from manual transmission cars. Clearly, electric, there's no transmission whatsoever. It's a single
That's right.
speed. How do you handle it? Is there any kind of way with regenerative braking and paddles to sort of emulate the standard transmission
Yeah.
experience?
It's great. Great. Look, there are, we've looked at this a number of times. So we actually, for example, in our GT40, we have a sound platform that actually does emulate
Mm.
kind of a V8. Personally, it's kind of interesting. I think because I'll give you an example. That car, yeah, that has got a custom transmission. So it's single speed, a reduction gearbox, in 400 horsepower motors, so 800 horsepower, 800 Newton meters of torque, which in my language is quite a lot.
Tire
And
shredding, yes.
yeah, and straight cut gears. I mean, this thing is just noisy in its own right. So people assume that EV is going to be quiet. This is not quiet at all. It feels
Mhm.
like a jet engine just behind you. So you can actually deliver cars that are hugely entertaining and but also visceral, weirdly, which people kind of get surprised at. With something like the Porsche, it's way tamed down, but you still can hear the EV motor spooling up. And with the Pagoda, actually you want, yeah, as quiet as you possibly can. So it does vary on the vehicle. But what I would say is, again, with something like the Porsche, because it's so alive, it's very small by modern car standards. It's got a load of power, very, very good suspension. So actually driving that through canyon roads or driving it up and down the freeway, you really do get that Porsche experience, but something that is now, it's not going to let you down. It's going to always be, you're not going to get oil on your garage floor. And it's certainly a statement as well in terms of what people do to them.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me into the next question, which is it sounds like obviously, again, as you say, it's essentially a new car on the inside, the guts. How much of the aesthetics and everything do you make any changes to the outside? Like, how
Right.
can we tell it's an Everati? And then
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question, but go for it.
Yeah, sure. So we're very subtle about our branding. So it is literally a smaller badge on the rear, maybe a subtle Everati, the V that you may see on our website, which represents electricity. So it's a heartbeat essentially. So we're very, very subtle when it comes to branding, but we're getting a great following now. So people kind of do recognize this when we take it to Pebble Beach, we take it to Goodwood Festival of Speed where I was today. People actually do, they really recognize it. When it comes to body, something like a Pagoda, you don't want to ruin it. It's gorgeous. It is such a gorgeous car. So they they end up kind of looking like almost concours standard restoration from the outside. The inside we can have a bit more fun with in terms of materials and leathers and stitching. But again, we don't want to change the architecture of the interior. And then we have things like custom dials. So our custom, our pagoda dials, which if you've ever seen a pagoda dial, looks like a beautiful watch face. We mimic that entirely. So with chrome and all the other elements, but it's then showing EV data. So again, to the untrained eye, our clients generally are, and it's an overused term, but they're thought leaders, they're leaders of industry. They want something that actually looks original, but is different. That kind of says a statement, I guess, about them as much as anything else, which is they've got the foresight to build something like this, but it's now, again, zero emission. Porsche, we do something a bit different, as I've said. So carbon fiber panels, we can have a load of fun with, Pepita interiors and different leathers and whatever. But again, to the untrained eye, it just looks like a beautifully, beautifully restored original that happens to have a few tweaks or smoke most things off the lights.
Amazing. This kind of
Yeah.
leads into my next question, which is, do people use these cars differently now that they're electrified? Like, I kind of can
They really
imagine,
do.
because you're not going to be driving your Porsche as a daily driver in the middle of the summer. Like, clearly you'll have issues, but I imagine now you can just take this anywhere, anytime.
Well, it's a really interesting question, and I'm glad you asked it because, again, people assume our client, and some of our clients have many, many cars. We actually delivered a client car last month, and he sent a little video to say thank you, and he panned out, and there's like 100 other cars in his collection, right? So that's kind of wonderful. Versus, we have clients that live in cities that maybe only have one or two or three cars, one of which, a gentleman lives in San Francisco, has his business down in the Bay Area. He drives his car that we created with him virtually every day. And he also has a Lucid. He also has some other cars in his stable. But again, he would never drive a 1980 or 1999, let's say 90 Porsche on a daily basis, in that environment. Now he absolutely can. So from that perspective, we're giving these cars a new life. It means that if you love these cars, you get to see them on the road, because generally speaking, that wouldn't be a standard car you see in traffic on a Bay Area freeway. We have another client here in London who has one of our Land Rover series, the 2A. 1968 this thing is. There's no way she would use it on a daily basis if we hadn't done what we've done, right? So yeah, so for me, again, it's giving them a new life. It's kind of bizarrely, and this might sound a bit strange, but it's giving car enthusiasts the ability to see these cars again, which they probably wouldn't actually, or certainly would only see maybe at a show or in a kind of a museum, not in a museum, but you know what I mean? We bring them back out.
No, it's incredible. Yeah, you're turning show cars into daily drivers, which is just absolutely incredible. But speaking of daily drivers, so let's talk performance, and not as far as 0 to 60 is concerned. Let's talk about battery charging, size, the
absolutely.
What kind of volt architecture do you use? Talk to us about all of those specs.
Yeah, so we start at 400 volt for a couple of our models, through to 700 right now on our GT40. We have the ability to go to 8, but it's just in terms of, I'm sure inverters, batteries, motors, it's getting the balance correct. Generally speaking, other than our Land Rover series, which is lower mileage, but most of our cars do 200-ish, maybe just over 200 miles, which is very usable. You're not going to do a big road trip, but again, I mean, in certain markets, people are doing 20 miles a day, really, once, if you count their commute time. Others, obviously, more. Charge times, we have CCS fast charging. So depending on the model, again, up to about 85 kilowatt charging. So it really depends on the model. So yeah, we try to make these as usable as possible. There's always a kind of three-way challenge, which is, okay, how much battery can you get in a packaging space that is by definition small? And by the way, we don't cut the chassis. We don't ruin the architecture of the car. So everything we're working with is original engine mounts, original fuel tank mounts. Wherever we can, we use the original aperture for the fuel tank is now the EV charging. So everything is fully considered. So you have that, how much battery, but also how expensive is that battery in terms of, if it's hugely power or energy dense, that's going to be more money, and therefore there's a bit of a balance there, through to, again, performance and cost. So it's kind of there's the three areas that we worry about, and it's just about getting that sweet spot that we have a car that we're happy with.
What's the typical size of the batteries that you install? I know you've got different parameters to work with each individual car, but what's the
Yeah.
average size?
Yeah. So I would say everything from 55 right now up to about 68. We've got a couple of programs we're running now up to about 80. But again, we are so key that we do not go over the original weight of
I
the
figured you were
original
going
vehicle,
there.
right?
I figured you were going there.
So
That's a big
so
factor.
yeah, so we don't mind as long as it's within the gross vehicle weight. The original gross vehicle weight, we're okay. Ideally, we want to get it to the original curb weight, which isn't always possible. We've achieved it. We actually achieved below that with our Porsche, but it's very much about having. Again, you lose the weight balance. You look. I'll be honest. Safety is a massive concern. If you're going to go above the original weight, that's not anywhere we would go. So it's all about keeping that balance for us as well.
Moving into the mind of your customer, would you say they're primarily motivated, again, kind of as we talked about, to be able to drive this car every day? Is it more about emissions? Is it more about, oh, I found a beautiful show car I want to restore, and while I'm doing that, I might as well electrify it? What's the mindset of a typical customer?
So it's a great question. So I think it's a bit of everything, but what I would say that kind of marks our clients out are they love tech, they love design, and they love, as a result, they love cars. So I think they're people that have a conscience. They do want to do something that's a bit different, and now is zero emissions. A lot of our clients technically could probably have anything, but actually buying a brand new, fire breathing, whatever Lamborghini versus buying something that is, that's got kind of a beauty and aesthetic to it, is a good thing. I think from that perspective, a lot of our clients are in tech. Some are in climate tech. They're people that kind of been in and around the energy space and are now, some of them potentially have been in oil business and now want to do something, the yin to their yang, as it were. So yeah, it kind of. But I guess the common theme is they love cars and they're very tech aware, and that kind of that works very well for us, as you can imagine.
That's super interesting. Do you think that, well, taking a step back, are they seeking a car to do this too, or do they typically have a car in mind, then they go and find
Right.
it? They own a
No,
car. What is that kind of approach?
no, it's so. I think only about 10% of our clients have owned the original car that they now have built with us. So in other words, it's been a
Interesting.
kind of it might have been a poster car they always wanted. It might have been, something that they've always loved the idea of, but didn't really want to own it as a combustion because, they're just not those type of people. They're not, or maybe they're just not, deep classic car people. They're not going to go under the hood if something goes wrong, right? They just want to look at something that's beautiful
They
and
don't know how
drive
to
something
turn
that's
a
beautiful.
wrench, but they can
Yeah,
admire its
exactly.
beauty.
Yeah. Look, we've all got special nails, right? We don't want to, we don't want to get them get them dirty, right? So I think so that was actually very interesting to me when we did that kind of analysis, which is what we're doing is selling a dream. It's the dream of that beautiful Porsche, that beautiful Land Rover, that beautiful Mercedes Pagoda, and the others that we have in the pipeline. That is bringing those people back into that type of car, and now they can drive it as a daily. They can use these things, and we have a client who is on record. A guy called Matt Rogers, who was the founder of Nest, so Google Nest. So he's one of our clients. His story is really really lovely, which is him and his father grew up in the back of their dad's Porsche 964 in Florida when they were kids. That's one of his favorite memories. And I asked him, why did you choose us? Why have you gone this route? And he said, look, I've always loved the 964 because of that experience. I've always loved the fact that, and I always promised myself one, but I would never have had one had it not been electric, i.e., he would only have this car if it was electric. And I think that's what some car people don't necessarily get, right? And everyone's different. But, people are, so our clients are, they love the look of a specific car. The Pagoda that I delivered yesterday genuinely is, it's a showstopper, right?
I've seen this
It's
video that you
gorgeous.
posted,
Yeah,
Justin.
right.
It is absolutely positively, there's
Yeah.
no hyperbole here. It is a showstopper. It's gorgeous.
They're gorgeous, right? And again, the chance of seeing that on the road normally is low. The other thing I would say is that we tend to, and it's going to sound weird, but we tend to take the non-holy grail cars, right? So a lot of our Pagodas have started life as a 230 rather than a 250 or
Mm,
280, right? So again, it's the lower rung of, if you like, the Pagoda. So they are slightly less loved as a vehicle, maybe the manuals as well. Our Porsches, almost all of them started life as a narrow body Tiptronic. So again, not the cars necessarily that people would aspire to. And then in the Land Rover, genuinely, we've had cars that when they came to us have plants growing out of them. They're that they're so unloved. So genuinely, we're giving these cars another life. We're making them look like literally $1 million, and people are using them every day.
Let's talk about procurement for a second. Where
Yeah,
are
that
you
was gonna be my
finding all
next
of these
question.
vehicles?
Yeah. So well, look, I mean, the great thing is we're not doing high volume, right? So I think right now, as of today, we have about 9 cars in build, which is a combination of actually pretty evenly split between Porsche and the Pagoda and a couple of Land Rovers in there. But what you find is, so for example, that they made 64,000 Porsche 964s, right? So, and when you consider, I think 80% plus of all Porsches ever built are still on the road. So, there's a pool of cars there. Of course, the underlying asset is getting more expensive as they become more popular and there's less of them. So supply and demand, but they are out there. Pagodas, again, they made significantly high numbers of these things actually. And there's an awful lot, I would say, that kind of almost got into the wrong hands. So they may have had a V8 swap, or they've had other things again that kind of makes them less desirable, quite frankly. And then on the Land Rover, again, they made thousands of these things. They're in
Zillions.
all over the place, whether it's South America, whether it's in Africa, and again, you build up a supply chain with as much as possible for our US clientele, and our US clientele is about 80% of all of our clients right now. We tend to be able to buy cars within North America, and what we prefer to do is always start with a US registered car and then start the work from there.
Is there a desire in the U.S. market for the left-hand drive, or is it a little more exotic to have a right-hand drive car?
Yeah, do you know what? Pretty every car. Yeah, I think I'm right in saying every car we built for the US right now is left-hand drive, bar one. A gentleman in Florida wanted something, again, just looked so British. So he went with a Land Rover in Old English white, with a right-hand drive, which is cool, right? He gets all the
Super
looks.
cool.
He's got something that nobody else has. But yeah, everything else has been left-hand drive so far for the US, certainly.
Talk to us a little bit about the process. So say I'm
Sure.
ready to move forward. I know that I want to maybe have a car in mind. Just a little bit more about how people approach you mostly.
Yeah. So let's say you want a Porsche 964, and you want it to be one of our kind of signature cars, which is a wide body. It's got all the kind of bells and whistles. We will take you through the specification process of how you want it to look. Do you want it cab? Do you want it coupe? Do you want it Targa? We will then help you acquire the donor car, so the original chassis, because most of our clients don't necessarily have the time or the inclination to do that, but also we have that supply chain. That car is then taken; it's completely stripped down, so it's catalogued, and stripped back. It's then
Are
taken
you talking about to the bolts, like down to the frame?
Everything, nothing is left on that chassis,
Oof.
basically. Now what we will find then is that goes on to what's called a select to make sure it's 100% straight, it's not had any accident damage, and if it needs to be kind of moved about a bit to make it 100% straight, that's all done. With our process, again, it goes from a narrow body to a wide body, so effectively the front and rear wings, fenders, whatever you want to call them, are all redone in carbon fiber. Obviously, brand new paint to whatever specification you desire, brand new interiors to whatever specification you desire. Install the EV powertrain, install things like adaptive suspension, upgraded braking systems. So literally, the whole car is renewed to, in some cases, better than new, but let's say better than new, but looking like a beautiful classic Porsche.
I'm just curious if there's a world where these types of EV conversions for classics can go mainstream, or is this always going to be a truly niche product?
I would say right now, and look, you haven't asked the price question, but it's an obvious one. These are not inexpensive, but I would, and I would say this, wouldn't I? The amount of work that goes into this is extreme, as you can
I'm
probably
getting that
imagine.
impression. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, could it be mainstream? To the standard we do, no, being blunt, but actually, who knows? It's quite interesting. the first BMW Mini, so not the classic Mini, but the first BMW Mini. There's hundreds of thousands of those around, and to certain people, yeah, they are an iconic car, even though they're not the original, right? The reason I mentioned that car specifically is actually it's slightly bigger than than the original. It's an iconic shape. There's a lot you could do with some of these cars that are far, far lower cost. Now, there's still engineering. There's still, we use very expensive batteries, motors, and all the other stuff, but there are alternatives. So what I would say is, look, the world needs to stop, unfortunately, buying everything brand new every single year, because that's not great for the planet. And actually, there are some beautiful, beautiful cars out there that actually, if you could upcycle them into something that's usable every day, it's a good thing. So I think it will definitely grow. Is what we do currently right for everybody? No, because it's just an expensive process that, can't be, there's not many shortcuts on that, as you can imagine.
Yeah, we had Nigel Gordon-Stewart on the
Yeah,
show recently, and I know he's a board member at
that's right.
Everati. And I love the way you both are covering the two sides of the equation over here, right? His Austins are built from scratch, brand new
That's right.
cars. There's no resto mod process, and obviously they're gorgeous. So I imagine for enthusiasts now, when you've got both bases covered over here, it's like, the credibility and the authenticity. You can either have a newly engineered car that performs great and is
That's
probably a lot
right.
more reasonable on the bank account. And then if you want to go full-fledged classic, we've got your option as well.
That's right. Absolutely right. Look, I think what we're finding is that what we're also doing is bringing these cars into a much younger demographic, right? So I think our youngest client now is certainly mid 30s. We also have quite a few females, just successful females in their own right that just love cars. And, again, I shouldn't mention that in any other way that's brilliant, because it just means that it's not just for car guys, it's for everyone. And again, we have people who maybe only have one or two cars, and this is their only car for one or two of our clients, right through to people who are big collectors and have options. So yeah, it's pretty, despite the fact that these are not inexpensive, it's pretty broad when it comes to the types of clients that we have as well.
One of the things that struck me, you kind of sent us all of your branding materials,
Mm,
your brand book, all of that. The brand is
great.
amazing. I've spent most of my
Thank
career in
you.
advertising, and it really genuinely blew me away, the level of detail you put into it. Where did this brand come from? How did you get where you are?
In this world, we have to be honest with ourselves. If you can get the domain name, that's a great start.
Fair
um,
enough.
but
Fair enough.
being honest, truly honest with you. So I've always believed that brand is hugely important, right? If we were just some small engineering company in Oxfordshire that no one's heard of, we wouldn't be winning, business from billionaires across the United States. So that's, that is hugely important. It's also about the team. The brand itself, however, is just so it's critical to us. So yeah, the name ever keeping great cars on the road forever, or as long as possible. Rati is the goddess of love, passion, and desire. So again, it has some meaning to it. And I'll be honest, there was a load of names kind of in that, and this one, A was the final winner for various reasons, and we managed to get the domain name. So it's kind of a very simple
And
one.
the real reason
Yeah, the
is
flying
it was
V.
available.
Yeah, exactly. The
.com.
flying V, which you kind of see here, again, is a heartbeat, because electricity is the core of life, right? Everyone, forgets that actually we have electrical pulses going through our bodies, and that's kind of what makes us tick. So again, it's that core life element that we love. And again, there's a story there which hopefully resonates with, with our clients and our supporters as well.
Yeah, I can definitely say you nailed it with the name. It just sounds
Thank
sexy.
you.
It's a really, really cool name.
Thank you.
You started off terrific, and it just went, it got even better from there. So that was a terrific start there with that name choice.
Thank you.
Okay, so now that we're kind of like on the business side of
Hmm.
things, what have you learned about EV adoption and converting skeptics, right? Because not
Right.
everyone's on board with this stuff.
Yeah, very much so. So, converting skeptics is fun, and when you consider that, I started the business 2019, the very first showing of our first Porsche, actually. So I was driving one of our prototypes during late 2020, and in fact, you'll have heard of Adrian Newey. Well, his son Harry Newey is a racing driver, and he happens to be almost a neighbor of mine. So he did some testing for us at Dunsfold, which, if you don't know, is the Top Gear test track. So that was
Yeah.
great fun. But the very first car we had kind of on the road as an Everati car was late 2021, so back in 2021. And so you're taking it to shows, you're getting journalists in it, and all of the kind of things that you do. quite interestingly, we were at a Porsche event actually, which, if you want to get lined up and shot, this is probably the perfect place to, to announce your presence. And a guy, and actually this was with one of my business partners, but a guy next to him with a GT3 said, I really don't get it. It's, I love the idea, but yeah, you've ruined it, haven't you? So yeah, it came to leaving, and they got onto, the kind of slip road to the freeway onto a motorway here in the UK. And yeah, my colleague just left him, and he's in the GT3, and yeah, our car just literally left him. And he'd been fortunate enough to get his WhatsApp number during the event. And he literally just said, okay, I get it now. And that was enough. I can't keep
That's
up
all
in
it
my
takes
GT3,
most of the time.
Yeah, and look, don't be wrong. Over a certain speed, of course, the GT3 would carry on. But for usable daily driving, having fun, you can't beat it really. And so that, yeah, from that perspective, that's been great. So yeah, skeptics wise, Porsche guys are probably the most skeptic in some ways, and that's fine. But then you say, and I know Taycan prices have taken a hit, but Porsche's Taycan has been a hugely successful car. And again, that's what people forget. And again. Yeah, 911 has gone hybrid. It will go EV at some point. The 718 is now EV. The Macan is now EV. Your Porsche people hopefully are now recognizing that EV is is an option for their vehicles going forward as well.
It just reminds me of when they first came out with their first SUV, and everyone was in this uproar,
absolutely.
and then lo and behold, it became the hottest selling
Most popular
Porsche out there.
exactly.
Yeah, it's a
Precisely
process.
right.
Well, it saved the
Yeah.
company, no? I mean, I think they were
Really
having
did.
tremendous trouble at that point, and they said,
Yeah,
we've got to do something. Yeah, anyway.
exactly.
All right. So, do you have any, bird's eye view over here? Do you have any advice for, other entrepreneurs working at the crossroads of tech and sustainability? You've
Yeah.
obviously pulled this off. Do you have any advice for anyone else thinking about getting into the game?
Look, follow your gut, follow your heart. I think, as we all know, as entrepreneurs, it's tough out there sometimes, right? And there are times when you kind of think, what have I done? I'm fortunate. This is not my first rodeo in terms of startup. So, I've done a few of these things now. But look, I think when you're onto something good is when people started recognizing, the cars, when embarrassing. I was in a hotel in Oman actually last year. One of the guys in the hotel in the concierge recognized me because he'd seen me on YouTube. You kind of see some of these things. How on earth does this happen, right? But I think follow your gut, follow your dream, and know when to pivot. So that's the other thing is, you might be, this is the car we've got to do. This is the process. This is the way we want to be. And, things change and new information comes to hand where, you do sometimes have to consider an alternative. And one of the big things that we're doing right now is continuing very strongly on our consumer business, which is the cars that we're talking about right now. We also have a huge opportunity, however, on a B2B business. So providing the powertrain expertise to third parties. And that is a really growing part of our business. So on the B2C side, we're now probably averaging 1 to 2 sales per month to new clients, which is great. But actually on the B2B side, we're getting involved in projects that are up to 5,000 vehicles or more, where we're developing the powertrain. It's all our own software that manages everything right from our B2B cars and our B2C cars. So, that again, that tech play in EV terms is really interesting as well.
Are you working with OEMs? Is this once again conversions or original designs?
These tend to be brand new cars. So it might be a new brand. It might be a revival brand. We have a company right now we're working with that is I guess it's a brand that car people would recognize that was back in the day is now being revived as a new EV sports car. So we will be doing the powertrain for them. We have others where it might be an off-roader, sort of a really cool kind of almost beach buggy type application. Because again, people forget that, in combustion, there's been 140 years worth of combustion. There's people out there that can do this. If you want a gas powertrain, you can go get a gas powertrain. And by the way, that's getting more difficult if you then want to put it on the road, because that has to meet current emissions, and people aren't selling you the new powertrain. They'll sell you one that was registered for Euro 5 or whatever back in the day. EV is different, but actually high quality EV engineering is fairly light on the ground in the market, and we've proven that we're really quite good at that. So we are talking to a couple of OEMs. We're talking to a lot of smaller businesses, right through to, I'll be honest, not just cars. We've got some opportunities in the marine space, so power boats and the like as well. So again, that high-end EV powertrain integration expertise And we've proven it a number of times. We've thousands of miles of, of our own cars and our clients driving our own cars that people trust us to look at their programs and develop powertrains for them as well.
That's incredible. We are coming up on time right now. I have a couple of fun questions to ask you before we wrap it up. What's the one classic car that you have not yet converted that you still have your sights set on?
Good grief. There's so many out there. I think I'd love to do a Ferrari, but I won't say just one just yet. I've been fortunate in my life to have owned quite a few Ferraris, but some of them, being blunt, are not as good as they could be just because they are slightly older. And there was some period in Ferrari's back catalogue that you wouldn't be ruining the original. You might be changing the engine noise, but you wouldn't be ruining the original. So I think that's one thing. But there's so many out there, right? There's so many iconic, gorgeous cars out there that are no longer really seen. And actually, if you could again build the kind of love of those things again, you'd have a great business. So yeah, there's a number out there, but yeah, one of the probably 80s or 90s Ferraris that possibly wasn't their best in terms of reliability and other things, create something. And again, that there were quite a few of them made, so you're not hopefully detracting from the overall market in that as well.
Hopefully a Testarossa is on your list there. I'd love to see that one converted.
Absolutely.
If we looked into the crystal ball, what does the next 5 years look like for Everati?
No, absolutely. So continue to run with the models that we have because they're only growing in pace, which is wonderful. We have a couple of announcements we're making actually at Pebble Beach this year about 2 new products that we're launching. One is a larger SUV type model, so larger than the Land Rover we do, and one is a high performance vehicle. So that's on the B2C kind of side, and then more on the powertrain provision, what we call powered by Everati, so our B2B play. We have a lot of programs that we're in dialogue with, and I think that they will a few of those will come to fruition. And then I'll be honest, we're just going into a funding round because we see so much opportunity here to really grow the business. Part of the output of that will be a true US footprint to and have demo cars and have some of our powertrain expertise within the US as well. So yeah, lots of exciting things happening.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
Justin, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a glimpse under the hood of Everati's world. It's really rare to find a company that honors the past while charging straight into the future, and we're really, really excited to see what Everati does next.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
All right, so that about does it for this episode of the Urban EV Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, leave us a review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. The road to sustainability starts at the plug, and that's why we're here. We will see you all next week with a new episode of the Urban EV Podcast.